rice is back in the stores, I would probably grab another bag while you can, and just be prepared, because I think food prices are going to go higher. But to protect yourself is that those are the stocks I was talking about where you probably want to buy, and I think what's going to happen is all else falls. What people don't realize is when all your money is going to go towards staples. See, if you notice the way the elites have worked it, right? They made healthcare too expensive. You have to buy it by law. They made rents too expensive because they let BlackRock basically corner the market, right? They stagnated wages, and then now they're going to make food prices too expensive.
We no longer have a stock market anymore. Instead, now we have a market of stocks. The new highs in the stock market are only following central bank money printing, and you simply can't blindly buy anymore. Treasury balance sheet hitting all-time highs. Now, there's always a bull market somewhere, and Trade Genius is here to help you find it. Their proprietary algorithms are finely tuned to find the most profitable winners and losers to help you maximize your profit. Learn to trade stocks, cryptocurrency, binary options. Perfect to take control of your financial future and discover the lucrative world of trading and receive personal coaching from trade geniuses Bob Kudla and Philip Cleaver. Right now until Father's Day, you can save over 50% off their bundled monthly specials, or use the promo code Father's Day for a whopping 40% off all non-bundled items. TradeGeniusAcademy.com. The link's in the description box below, and on with the interview. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, again, Bob Kudla, TradeLikeAGenius.com. There's so many ways that we can dissect this. I've had a lot of people asking me, what do you feel about the FedCoin and the ongoing money printing? And a way to protect yourself, we're going to have to think of different assets or different asset classes to be able to weather through if indeed it does go into a hyperinflationary event, some sort of reset, or whatever it might be with the monetary system we understand currently. Bob, thanks for joining me. What do you feel in today's landscape with the amount of money printing? They pulled back, and now they said they're going to issue another $700 billion next week, and the Treasury balance just keeps growing and growing, and the national debt is nonstop. It's $27 trillion now. So where do we end from here?
Yeah, I'll probably be a bit of a contrarian here, is that the dollar, ironically, is going to go higher. And the reason being is that all the other currencies in the world are in worse shape than ours. You got to remember, the dollar is not an absolute thing. It's a currency is only judged against other currencies. So when people see the dollar index, that index is against the euro, the yen, the pound, the yuan, etc., the Swiss franc, et cetera, et cetera. Having said that, the reason for that also is that a lot of debt around the world is denominated in dollars, and that debt is starting to get defaulted on in the US and around the world. And so what they have to do is they have to print more and more currency out there just to keep the dollar from instead of exploding, have the dollar basically implode, which means that it'll go up in value, which means deflation will take hold. They're desperate to avoid deflation right now. It seems weird, but that's what's happening. But where the pain is coming in is that, we were just talking about this today in our trading room, is that they're ring fencing the assets of the rich, okay? And the liabilities and the expenses of the poor are rising, i.e. the things that they need to have to live. Those things are going up in price to protect the assets that the rich have. And then with the dollar going up, it's really not relevant to us. It's really relevant if you're listening outside the United States. Your currencies are toast. So I would quickly get into gold, silver, food stocks, anything that's going to be an inflation hedge outside the dollar. And the dollar will have its day, but it'll have its day probably in a couple of years from now. And what we're seeing now is when gold and the dollar start moving up together, that's the next ratchet down in terms of, Armageddon for the financial market. Then eventually it'll just be gold, and then the dollar will be thrown away. So that's what we're seeing here. And so we never changed our view on this, is that, right now we're getting this big pump in asset prices because of the money the Fed's putting out there. They have nowhere else to put it. They don't want to invest in anything growth related because they don't trust the economy. So they just shove it into the stock market, knowing the Fed's going to keep bringing more money in behind it. But it's really dead money, if you will. And then the poor, they're not in the stock market. So they're dealing with, the price of beef going from $8.99 a pound for a ribeye to $16.95 for a ribeye. For ground beef going from $2.99 to $5.99. That's the stuff that they're seeing. And at the same time, add these riots in, and people even losing access to food. So it's really going to be a bifurcated market. There's an old biblical phrase that said that, don't harm the olive oil in the wine, but you're going to have to work a whole day for basically a portion of barley. And if anybody knows anything about the grain hierarchy of desire, barley is the cheapest stuff you can make and grow, basically saying people are going to be living subsistence while the rich are going to be living in pleasure. And that's kind of what's going to happen with the economies around the world.
Sounds like the Bitcoin citadel's manifesting. Now,
Yep.
a quick note in Asia here. Hong Kong is having a run on US dollars because of the new national security law that's coming in on top of the regular constitution in Hong Kong. Everybody's trying to flee out of Hong Kong dollars, knowing that there might be a decoupling of the peg. We're starting to see a run on dollars where they've actually run out of US dollars in Hong Kong from people wanting to trade so much. And what they've done then, because there are not enough dollars, is transitioned into the euro and the British pound as second and third choices. When it comes down to the meats that you just mentioned, I'm seeing prices now, people are reporting back to me, of ground beef being $8.99 a pound. Okay, having a nice prime cut of meat that's $30, $15, whatever it is, that's, you either have money or you don't to afford that. But when it gets down to the very base level of having a meat source of, even if that's what if it goes up to $16 for a pound of ground beef? What's the second and third choice for most people that are going to be priced out of the market food-wise? Because if you're looking at the world wholesale rice prices, they've eclipsed 2008 run-up levels. It's the highest since the 1960s now for rice on a inflationary basis. So wherever you're looking across, meats, vegetables, rice, staples, wheat, barley, and everything is hitting highs right now. We spend about 5 or 8% of our total expenditure on food. Other countries spending 30, 40%. I mean, how much can they go, and what do you think that second or third choice will be? And then again, what the most important thing is, how do you think people can protect against this type of inflation, whether it be for food or for rent or housing or any kind of large ticket items? Anything that we're going to buy is going to go up. So, quite a few questions in there, but second, third choice, and then how to protect yourself inflation wise.
Yeah. So here's the hierarchy of protein, right? You go egg, chicken, pork, beef/lamb. So you're just going to see that roll down. And the reason why that is you can bring a chicken to market in 60 days. You can bring a pig to market in 4 months, but it takes 2 years to bring a cow to market. And they messed the whole fake coronavirus thing, kind of messed that all up, because now the WHO's out there saying, well, unless you're sick, you can't get people sick, and everybody intuitively knew this, but they threw all the supply chains out of whack. And I think all this is cover for them. So fearful about the solar minimum coming, they're trying to distract people with other crises because they keep trying to yammer on about global warming. I mean, look, I-90 in Montana, you can't get over the pass; it's snowing. I-80 on the pass into California Sierras, they got a dusting on the mountaintops. This is June, and they're still getting snow. And I talked before in Southern California. We got rain on Saturday. It was nice. The weather was beautiful. And I think the monsoons are going to be coming up this way. And then the thing about how to protect yourself is, I shot you a chart. If you notice, Mosaic has been moving up nicely. When you get crops in the ground late, you got to goose it with the potash and other things to get the crops to pop. And so that's why you're starting to see the movement. And start looking at all the ag chem companies. We're going to get big moves on that. I shot you a thing on corn. We're going into now where we should get a good move on corn. I think it's already up 4% from last week. So those are tradable events. There's soybean and wheat. You can also trade on the ETFs in the US. And, we use our ribbon system to identify these opportunities. And there'll be a few food companies that you can buy because they're going to be able to basically play the inflation game of buying, holding, then selling higher, just like the gas stations do when oil prices are moving up. Or moving down, I should say. They play that game where they can manipulate their inventories to maximize their profit. And if you saw Pilgrim's Pride, and I think Tyson executives may go to jail for price fixing. So we have a different problem here in the US. We have very few producers now, and they're all holding price. So they're trying to keep people from being able to afford anything. And I think after all this PPP money runs out here in June or July, I think it's going to be a fall of biblical proportions.
I want to add into that. Speaking of the ag, I got a notice from True Leaf Market, their seed supplier, Heirloom and Organic Seeds, that they're now starting to experience shortages for several varieties of the seed. Either it doesn't grow because some of it came out of Idaho and the conditions were wrong completely and it wiped out bean crops, different kind of bean seeds. And what they're finding also, the black olive sunflower seed that's produced mainly in northern Italy. They have sharecroppers that are out there that grow specifically contract batches that are sent directly over to, and they're having a real problem with importing and exporting seed varieties. So they're starting to show a lot of the different families of seeds are having shortages within a certain species. Now, they're talking about this extending in through 2021 and 22. So whether it be a seed you put in your own garden or whether it be agribusiness that they're putting out in the large fields, seeds are seeds, plants are plants. And if they're struggling to grow in some areas, they're struggling to grow in a lot of areas, Australia being one. But, that seed shortage thing caught me off guard, that you and I as farmers, a backyard farmer, gardener, are now going to have a more difficult time accessing seeds, starting with beets. And I thought that would be the last thing, root crop type of vegetables. I can understand the sunflower seeds and the different potato varieties. I mean, these are things that are growing underground, and this is what was supposed to be saving us from these grand solar minimum above ground crush of the wheat or whatever would be bowled over by winds or hail. But then these very below ground things, it's just a mixed up kind of agrarian world here where we're already losing production, and you can see it everywhere. If you're really looking for it, you can see the losses, and you can see why they would want to distract an entire planet, because all that anger would be directed toward the elite for not warning everybody for these last 20 years that we could have gotten ready. I think that's more the game of all this distraction. It has to get more grandiose, but
I went to the garden center this weekend, and I was looking for certain seeds, and I was talking to the manager, and this is a private, this is not a chain, and he said the people are just coming in. They had actually had a limit how many seeds people can buy because people were hoarding seeds. And if you notice, I should have took a picture for this weekend, but the whole seed rack was empty. And I said, when are you getting any in? He said, we probably won't be getting any in for months because we have to wait for the next crop to become available. But yeah, they wiped out a lot of the seeds, and I just doubled my garden this weekend, so I'm getting ready for a really interesting 12 months here. I would encourage people. Rice is back in the stores. I would probably grab another bag while you can, and just be prepared, because I think food prices are going to go higher. But to protect yourself is that, those are the stocks I was talking about where you probably want to buy. And I think what's going to happen is all else falls. What people don't realize is when all your money is going to go towards staples. See, if you notice the way the elites have worked it, right? They made healthcare too expensive. You have to buy it by law. They made rents too expensive because they let BlackRock basically corner the market, right? They stagnated wages. And then now they're going to make food prices too expensive. Well, the American economy survives and thrives on what we call the services that are non-essential, if you will. Where people just go, hey, a dog walker, or go get a massage, or go get your nails done, or go get a high-end haircut, or go on vacation. those are the value adds of living in America, where you don't, you don't run out of money on the 23rd of every month, and the elites are they're just bound and determined to just have you locked into the four things you're spending your money on, and the rest of those businesses go away, and those are all middle class, service businesses that are going to get wiped out. And so, we're going to get a double whammy. A lot of people are going to be unemployed at the same time. There's not going to be enough. I don't want to say there's not going to be enough food. There's not going to be enough food that's going to be cheap enough until we can reconfigure, how we do things. I mean, my 1 mile walk up to the coffee shop, the area that I walk through can probably grow enough food just on the lawns of the housing development, probably to feed all 1,100 people in our development. So unless they start victory guarding all the common areas, there'll be plenty of food. It's just that it's going to take political will and a change of attitude.
It's always the way it is, back against the wall, then things change. Nobody wants to change when it's comfortable. And what will it change? Because we see the Pick for Britain campaign going on right now. And that's because the laborers that are coming over from Europe, now they say it's with the Brexit separation, but with the 14-day quarantines over in the UK and really difficult to travel there, it's hard to get 80,000 migrant laborers to come over and do all the, field work out there. So they're asking, individual citizens across the UK in your local municipality, can you come and help us pick this year's harvest? And it's hashtag Pick for Britain. So when it comes down to a country's already going to that level where it's saying, hey, citizens, we need your help to even get the food crop in for this year. What can those people learn and then turn that into self-sufficiency inside their neighborhoods? But at the same token, right in the very couple next paragraphs of that same article, they were called, nationalist for trying to be more self-sufficient. And why don't we want to buy other people's products and use other services? Oh, you're so nationalist and so protectionist because you don't want to buy our stuff. We're like, wait, we can grow it right here. We got great soil and we already grow this thing. So why would we want to buy it from you? So, what can people learn in this and try to take that sovereignty away? Because, a lot of these problems that are happening with the protests right now, I think it's misfocused a little bit. Notice how last year in November and December, there were 22 protests across the world wanting change in the banking system and the government structure itself in nations. How quickly that's flipped over to new narratives. Fine, there's a lot of oppression in whatever government you're going across the planet. But to be able to get off this system, that's how you defeat this system. Moving to cryptocurrency, getting off, growing your own food so you're more self-sufficient, trading and bartering amongst your neighbors so you don't have to pay tax and you aren't using currency. Trying to get away from the entire system that's pulling everything down. And, they keep going back. It's the building over here. It's that, no, it's the system itself. It's like kind of a non-tangible thing you can't grab out of. Well, what can you do in your own lifestyle with your neighbors, like you said, your families, communities around you to make those steps into more self-sufficiency as we move down this grand solar minimum, step by step down in economy and, population migration and food production. And this happens every grand solar minimum, that fingerprint. You see those three things every time. We're going to have to step up and take our own sovereignty back to be able to make these changes, I think, as we move through. And I'm really very much a fan of Moneymaker to be able to trade off some of the easy crypto moves that I see instead of, trying to rip through a day trade every 5 minutes to just pick out the cherries that are at the tops and bottoms there. So that's my personal thing.
Look, the system works great. I mean, look at this weekend. I think it was a 5% move in Bitcoin. So, these things are sitting out there. Hopefully get back to the weekend. Let the Asian trade on Friday, pay you for Saturday, when they go to bed, you pocket the dough, So I think you're going to see a lot more of that. When you talk about Hong Kong, people are going to be trying to bail out of that system fast. And, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of immigration into United States, Canada, Britain, Australia, New Zealand from those folks in Hong Kong that are going to try to get out of ahead of the beast there. But look, China's in trouble. We talked about this before. It's really, really fascinating to me is, look, there's 5 countries in the world that can really, what I would call, they're the feed the world people if they have enough. You're talking about United States, you're talking about Canada, Australia, you're talking Argentina, you're talking Brazil, and that's pretty much it. And then you look at that, Australia is going through incredible cold weather, and Canada is going to go offline on the solar minimum too. So you're down to United States, Brazil, and Argentina, and I think there's not enough infrastructure in the North African countries yet to be able to feed Europe. And Europe kind of hit or miss. Some years they can feed themselves, some years they can't. I failed to mention Russia, but if you notice, Russia and Ukraine have already decided that push comes to shove, they're not going to export.
Nothing.
Because they know that's how they lose power, and the United States, we're getting this huge flooding in our central river valley right now, and China just basically is displacing 1 million people in one of their river valleys right now with flooding, as one of their fertile valleys too. So we're going to start seeing, that's the thing about the solar minimum, these river valleys are going to get inundated, and they're not going to be able to put the crops in the ground. So, not wheat so much, but I think I'm waiting to see corn really go in higher in prices.
I was too last year, and the 2019 no plan, but the USDA put in a bunch of fictitious numbers, and finally just this last crop report reduced down 21 million acres finally this year. Wish that would have happened last year, because it would have caused corn to go the direction I wanted it to. So yeah, they can't hide it anymore. I mean, and in this hurricane that's going up straight up the valley, they're talking about not salt water being pushed all the way up into the Great Lakes, but that storm surge itself, because the river's at such a flood stage massively anyway, that as it's coming down, there's just more water on top of more water. It's got to back up in there. But this thing about Argentina, speaking of currency, you're getting double the black market rate versus the government rate. So a lot of the exporters down there, the country, like we'll use Brazil, border right there. So the Brazilians are coming over and they're getting a black market rate just over the border, and they're walking in and then buying the crops for 50%. So the farmers are much more willing to sell to the black market traders that are bringing their own trucks in versus the government mandated price of half that, and it's changing every day. Last time I looked, it was around 68, and then the black market rate was up around 140. So the arbitrage between you having a vehicle and money on the black market rate to come in and buy double the amount out of, and then bring it back in and sell it in your own country at the regular price and then double it. So they learned that quickly. They don't want to sell to the government anymore. So there's a backup in all the barge traffic, and there's a backup in deliveries to the ports, because nobody wants to sell off into the official government rate, because they know they can get double that if they wait for somebody to come across the border. And then there's all these new trading stations that are setting up there, where they'll even call in orders in advance, like, hey, we're coming down with this much, we have this many trucks, and then get ready, and they just pull through and fill it. Here's your money, go spend it quick, because it's going to be worth less tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Argentina isn't trying to block those bridges back over to
unbelievable.
It's just amazing, because they have a river across most of that northern frontier. So I'm expecting them to say, I saw articles where they were demonizing the farmers, the government, because just like Venezuela, they want to underpay the farmer so that they can look good in front of their constituents. It's kind of like, instead of defund the police, it's defund the farmer, for their political ruin. And then they destroyed Venezuela's production that way, and they may do that for Argentina. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it may come down to the United States and Brazil, being able to be the only people that can really produce anything, and it's going to be scary. And I know in India now, they're blocking exports of certain crops over there. I know they blocked exports of certain drugs.
And, they just cut that rice crop down. They were having riots already in the country because of rice prices increasing too fast.
Yeah.
I hope we don't see, are we going to see that on American streets? It gets too expensive?
I don't know. I mean, a year ago, I couldn't have predicted the two things. And I think I pride myself on kind of seeing around the corner. I didn't see no pandemic coming around the corner. And I certainly didn't see this coordinated approach to basically defund our ability to protect our citizens. You go through their neighborhood, it's going to be like Europe in the Middle Ages, where every time you cross over a frontier, you have to pay somebody. And then that's what's going to make food ridiculously expensive, because it might be cheap getting to the city, but by the time you get paying off all the warlords to get to the grocery store, it may be triple to what you would have to normally pay. And I think that's the thing nobody's thinking through. They're thinking, hey, when this is over, look, if you're a predator, Look at the mafia did in Italy, and the Irish with the Molly Maguires. It's not just a black or brown thing. The whites did it too. When there's no police, they become the police in those neighborhoods, and that's what's going to happen when society breaks down. We're going to basically go back to some sort of feudal kind of approach where you're going to have to pay tolls to get your stuff in and out. And look, Amazon, their trucks aren't getting in there unless they pay a warlord off to get it to the next block over. And if they cross over another warlord's block, they got to pay that person too. So I think what's going to come from all of that is that they're going to try to front run it by saying no more cash.
Down to the crypto. And again, if you could grow your own food, or if you're in a community that grows food, you don't even have to worry about that, because within your local municipality, if you're growing quite a bit, you won't be so reliant on those other essentials coming in.
Yeah, it's more than food, Dave. I mean, look, in Southern California, there's only 3 exits out of here. So the big worry was if you get these big earthquakes, cuts off water, gas, electricity. But, going out the north, you're either taking the 101 or you're taking the 5, or going out to the east, you're taking the 10, 40, or 8, right? So, those are 5 choke points that for 20 million people, and so that's the thing that's going to be interesting to me. And I worry about that because that's where I live, but it could be anything you want. They burned down one of the Amazon distribution centers coming into the valley. They burned down a few more of those. These Tifa people know the choke points, okay? These aren't just mob guys rioting in the street because they're angry. These are people with a predetermined mission to shut down Western society. So we're having that on top of the food stuff. So you're going to have to, people are going to have to make really hard decisions. You and I joked about this before. You take a ruler, you take a map, you draw it out 150 miles from the center city of every city, and that's where you probably want to live. You want to be more than a half a tank away from these folks being able to get to you. And that's the other thing too, gasoline. When are they going to start burning down the gas stations? They've done that before too. And so, people are going to be unable to get transported to their stuff. Not everybody's going to have the luxury of being able to move into the rural areas. And that's what's going to really, I think, cause a lot of dislocation.
And even if you're able to store petrol out on your farm, let's say you have a 200-gallon tank that you keep out on your farm, and you can't keep that gasoline indefinitely. Yeah, you have to use through it. You just can't store it for 10 years and be like, oh, I got 200 gallons of gas that I stored for 10 years. No, you got sludge at the bottom after that time. That's unusable.
Solar, and that's why I got in the solar business so many years ago. It's not a panacea, but you have an electric car, or you're going to have
electric bikes.
I see so many electric bikes out here now that that's one way in which you can beat the system. The other one, I always tell people, look, buy one silver coin every week. If every Patriot would do that, you would blow up probably J.P. Morgan Chase or one of the other bullion banks in a year, because they would not be able to. You would force the price to go astronomical, because that's one of the most suppressed metals out there from a banking system. And then Bitcoin. If every person in the United States that believe how we believe, and let's say there's only 10 or 20 million of us, right? And everybody invested $1,000 in Bitcoin right now, they would amply get paid over, because it would just blow up the surge in demand will just blow up the price from the people who are suppressing it now in the futures market and the options market. They'll just get rolled right over. So people don't realize the power they have, in terms of be able to force change. It doesn't always have to be destructive. It could be, let's break up the banking systems.
I saw a report, Bitcoin addresses with one whole single Bitcoin or more in the address. And there's an enormous amount of people who have half, a quarter, whatever fraction it is. And there's an enormous amount of millions and millions and millions of addresses, but they all contain just a tiny, tiny fraction of one. And then I was looking at some of these funds coming out, the F fund, and they're, it's unbelievable how much these new hedge funds are buying in, and these new investment arms, since you mentioned JP Morgan there, buying in enormous amounts of Bitcoin. Some of these funds are holding 1% of all the Bitcoin that's ever been mined, 2% of all the Bitcoin that's ever been mined is being held by a single entity, you know. So then where does it come into the decentralization part? Can it be, you know, taken over if so many of these investment funds come in and then actually control 51%? Would they fork? Would they not fork? Who knows? But to see that small amount of one whole Bitcoin addresses is very small, a smidgen. So get in off the system somehow. And, you know, I read this really interesting report today about confiscation of either gold, silver, Bitcoin, the money in your bank, or whatever it might be. There was a whole array of things that could be confiscated for a currency reset. And if it's in a custodial account for, you know, some of the crypto, unless it's segregated, they were saying that that could possibly be confiscated for a reset on the dollar here. And I'm like, wondering about the custodial aspects of different things. Now, when I didn't before, I understand keeping it on exchange, unless you're able to really get in there and have the keys and work with people who have the keys and control of everything, versus it's just some out there entity. I'm not going to mention any because that could be litigious. But there's a lot out there that just said they lump everything together, and then the government could just come in and say, hey, it's all ours, versus have seg accounts or working with somebody who has keys and whatnot to be able to protect that sort of confiscation. You know, gold's one thing, physical, they know you ordered it. But, you know, coming in on a company where you might have something in there and then whoosh, swooping it out. We're living in strange times where they're going to want to reset the currency system.
Yeah, and, you know, and people don't realize, you know, Germany, the Weimar Republic, they got out of their hyperinflation because they pledged the real estate of the nation. So a lot of people think that, oh, they're going after gold. Well, you know, gold is tiny compared to real estate.
Tiny. Silver's even smaller.
Yeah, so, you know, why wouldn't somebody just say we're going to do a 1% tax on all the real estate in the country? You know how much money you'd raise? I think there's $54 trillion of real estate or something like that. You know, so I mean, you can raise, you know, trillions over years that way. I think it might be 150 trillion. That's the mortgage or something like that. So there's a lot of money in real estate that they could tax if they wanted to, and they could tax every transaction. So they don't, you know, once they get you on a digital system, it could just be bombs away, you know. And I think that's where they're going to go. Now, you know, I think Bitcoin, there's going to be some decentralized currencies out there because, you know, intelligence agencies and governments around the world and politicians still need a way to cheat. And so they're going to be able to operate outside of these systems, but everybody else is going to be stuck inside. They have to have untraceable currency to conduct that kind of business. I'm not being moral about it. I'm just saying I think that's what's going to happen. But you and we're going to be stuck in a system where they're going to just say, you know, it's illegal for you to transact in anything other than FedCoin. What are you going to do? You know, besides barter, you know, you're going to be stuck in that system. And I foresee that coming sooner than later, you know, and but I think there's digital currencies out there. And since we're speculating, I don't trade in the world of speculation. I just see what's in front of me. So in the meantime, I'll just take advantage of opportunities and protect my family, because you don't know, something may come to pass the other way. This whole thing may blow up. I always tell my family, I said, you know, the aristocrats in France thought they couldn't lose either, you know, in the 1700s, and they turned around and created the whole new you know, Western civilization because the people rose up. So, you know, these guys may think they're in charge, but look how fast the world changed in the urban areas of this country in one weekend. So it doesn't mean that there can't be more of that kind of change when other people get mad too.
You got to think about that French Revolution because of food. You know, if you want to bring it back to the catalyst that started all that, hungry people being oppressed by the government, outrageous taxes for food, and they were already hungry. Not such quality foods, again, right at the bottom of the barrel, forced to eat rye every day. I mean, it's a specialty bread now for us, but, you know, being forced to eat that all the time, even though it was moldy and whatnot, people got really, really angry because the government didn't take care of their belly being full. And when you're full, when your belly's not full, you're going to demand even more change than we're seeing right now for, let's say, bad money management. You know, when it comes to the food, That's truly what changes governments and civilization, society. Food, food, food.
Well, that was the Arab Spring in 2011 too. So that's it was food shortages because they couldn't afford to import the wheat, and then they started to raise the prices of everything because the Fed, the Fed caused that's why the Fed shifted gears so fast. That's why gold and silver was flying in 2011 and got whacked because they knew they had to take a U-turn on the way they were going with the dollar because they were killing it. They were letting the dollar devalue, and all the countries that use the dollar for commerce were like, we can't afford to feed our people. And then you started having Tunisia and Egypt and Libya and all those countries in North Africa just started to revolt because they couldn't import the wheat at a reasonable price. So I think that's going to happen. That's one of the nice things about being in America is that we do and we will be able to produce enough food. There's a lot of land that's just sitting fallow that they'll figure it out. And I know you and I always just go different ways here, but I've been reading now that we're going to start seeing like indoor rice being grown indoors because you can feed about 150 to 200 people a year on an acre of rice if you can control the basically the three crops a year. And if you can control the environment, that makes it affordable to throw a roof over top of things or to put grow lights on top of this stuff. And I think you're going to start seeing more of that kind of creative thinking. We're going to be blowing out of soybeans, and we're going to be growing rice in the Mississippi Delta here, pretty soon because Brazil's pretty much controlling the soybean markets, and so I think you're going to see a lot of that shifting around. But there's going to be a couple of years where we're going to be behind the curve.
Well, see, I'm wondering, that's such a huge opportunity to restart the economy. Imagine what a huge kickstart it would be to start the indoor vertical agriculture, or what you're talking about, intensive cultivation on multi-platforms. But think about all the money that would be put back in for the investment, but then also the jobs and skills training, and just rerouting everybody over into the ag without telling them the true reason why we needed to go there. Grand Solar Minimum, hey, we could have told you 20 years ago this was coming. The economy gets imploded, evaporated, but then, hey, we got a perfect solution for you, just what you mentioned. We can feed more people. We can do it more economically with less impact on the environment, checks all those boxes. You can put everybody back to work, check those boxes. Then you get the massive amount of infrastructure because it really needs hard physical, steels, metals, glass, computer-driven, irrigation systems along with the fertilizer and all that thing. That's real hard asset that needs to be purchased, manufactured. And then again, it's a way to start manufacturing back in the States. So there's so many things that could come about if it went into a massive, massive scale, like Almira in Spain, where you get just square mile after square mile after square mile covered in greenhouses. But imagine if we did it by hundreds of square miles by hundreds of square miles, and regionally as well. So you could be growing things at any time of the year. And imagine if you had a climate controlled system, you'd still be able to grow basil and lettuce even in the middle of January up in Michigan, northern Michigan, because it would be climate controlled. There's still enough ambient UV coming through the light to be able to heat that. I think that's going to be the next play. Is there's going to be so many disused shopping malls and things. That's to a point. We could probably feed 2% of the population of the United States, refurbing those. But I'm talking about full, brand new rollout and build from the beginning to kickstart the economy again.
From my house out to Denver, I think there's 4 towns. That's 1,500 miles. Okay. So there is a lot of empty land. And now with desal, San Diego is completely water independent. They just put a desal plant into Huntington Beach. I think they're going to do a couple more up in LA. So there's going to be water that'll be able to be diverted from the Colorado to Owens River back into ag. And they can run pipelines right out into the Mojave, and that whole area can be. What people don't realize, the Mojave Desert goes from 4,000 feet down to sea level. You put any of that under glass anywhere there, you can grow any crop you want. Solar out there because you get enough solar radiation so that you don't have to pay for any electric or lighting. It's definitely there. It's going to be, and I think interesting. I think a lot of people are going to leave the cities because the cities have failed the people. And I think people are going to want to be in smaller communities where they know all their neighbors and they know everybody has each other's back. Where you go into a city, you don't know anybody from Adam who's there. Is that person going to rob me, or is that person going to support me? And I think you're going to see a lot of what I call inburb to exurb. All this commercial real estate going to bust. 1,400 square feet feeds a family of four. People don't realize what little amount of square foot you need to be able to feed people, especially in California, where you basically have you have a 2-crop season minimum, and some stuff all year. I can grow lettuce every week out here the whole summer. My worst summer is the summer where people are begging for it, where summertime it goes to bust. I mean, it bolts. Like my carrots and lettuce are starting to bolt now, but people are just getting their carrots and lettuce into the ground. So, I could grow things when it's expensive, and I can buy it when it's cheap.
But again, that winter grow season was what we're lacking. And there used to be a name for that called the hunger gap, a very traditionally known part of when the end of the winter, after you'd been storing your root crops. And so, you got your pumpkins and the different beets and these types of things that had come in, radishes that had come in at the end of the harvest for Thanksgiving time. And that would last you all the way until a certain time, but it was just a little bit before you could get those first lettuce and cabbage and all these other things into the ground to start growing those. 6 to 8 week window, generally 6 weeks or so. And they called it the hunger gap. And that was very well known until we got better farming techniques, and, towns started to get a little bit bigger, and there was better trading, even by wagon back in the late 1600s into the 1700s. And then that hunger gap kind of alleviated after, say, circa 1800 with steamships. But, thinking about that again, reversing back in time, what's your hunger gap around your local area? What's the time that you can't really grow unless you were to put something under a greenhouse or protect that? It's the kind of way we got to start thinking again, these more pioneering tricks, if you will, pioneering lifestyle tricks, really knowing your environment around you. Like right now it's too hot. What can I do to irrigate the plants and keep them from dying because it's too hot? I don't know. I'm still working with it here.
It's called, around here it's the Mexican gardening. So you put corn in the ground, you put squash, and you put beans. So you can go 3 crops. The pumpkins, they block the weeds, and the beans grow up next to the corn. You see some of the older stuff come back together. I'm of the, and you and I both talked to, I'm more of a lemonade guy. So if I see where the obstacles are coming, I'm gonna try to front run it. Solar was an easy business for me to get into. I'm still trying to figure out how to manipulate this urban gardening thing. In terms of, I think I'm gonna wait until commercial real estate gets a little cheaper, and I think there'll be opportunities to steal bad land. I was watching an article. That's pretty funny. I was watching a YouTube of a guy in Goa. It's an old Portuguese colony, and he took basically 1/5 of an acre of land. I think a little bit more than that, maybe even a 1/4 acre of just concrete. Those cracked concrete, bad dump, and he mulched it for 2 to 3 years, and basically turned it into an urban oasis where he grows enough food, not for himself, but he's a market gardener now, and he's able to sell stuff every week into the market, and he grows everything he needs. He has chickens, guinea fowl, eggs, and every fruit and vegetable you could think of. And he's a 2-crop area because Goa is down in the hot part of India. So I think you're going to see more and more people do that. I mean, all our grandparents, we grew up with gardens. You only went to the food place with stuff you couldn't grow yourself, and we put everything up. I mean, we never bought fruit. I mean, everything was preserved and canned and sliced and then frozen, and vacuum packed. And I think you'll see more and more of that again.
Remember, with all this great talk of being self-sufficient, it's going to take some capital to get you into the game there. To try to start that to bootstrap that with zero cash, a little bit more difficult. I'm sure you could go to places and ask for equipment and find it and get it, but having the actual cash to get the things that you need so you can get the best couplers, sprayers, foliars, and whatever it might be to get yourself started, even get, a big 5-pound bag of seeds to get that and put in wood to put up beds. You need money to do that. You truly do. So, being financially able to onset and with these changes is going to be a great asset versus going into this thing completely broke.
Yeah, look, and we can help you get there too. I mean, right now, our system sees the opportunities. Like right now, we're big in the oil tankers, and they're going to have another big quarter. I mean, today a lot of them are up 5 to 10%, and we've been moving in and out of the miners, and so we just help you just move from trade to trade to trade to trade. I mean, if you trade all the trades that we take, the results have been over the last 2.5 years is that you could double your money if you're fully invested with us every year. Just trading the way we trade. We're in and out of trades every 3 days. So, if you're 50% invested, then you're 50% a year. If you can keep fully invested, you'll make 100% a year. Just in the trades we just keep kicking off for people. And if you make $50 a day, that's $1,000 a month. If you make $400 a day, that's $100,000 a year. So it's not like you have to do this huge, fantastic amount. We just call it getting rich slowly. You just keep building it up every month, every year. And right now I'm pouring all my capital into these oil tankers. They're producing. One's going to have an 83-cent dividend next week, and it's a $10 stock. I mean, those are the things that we find for people, and especially people that are looking for secondary income, or are looking to retire soon, or they're looking for capital to do some of the stuff that we're talking about. I mean, you spend $500, you can set up a garden that'll pay you $500 a month.
Coming up. So how far out do I have to hold that stock before I would be paid the dividend on that? Can I buy it a day before? Do I have to buy it a week before?
Yeah, you buy it the day before, what's called the ex-dividend date. And the stock is EURN. I'll share it. And look at it today. I mean, it went from 980 to 1040. Okay, because people are starting to recognize it. On the 15th, you have to hold it by the 15th. At least you have to hold it through the date if you want to get the dividend, and dividends paid like 2 weeks later. But it's moving up not just because of the dividend, it's moving up because they're printing cash, because all the oil tankers are out there are full. And so they're a seller's market. They could dictate the price. And so, we're in TNP, we're in DHT, we're in EURN. All these things have moved. They're all up 5-10% today. And if you look, we did this again 90 days ago. We just do it every quarter. And so we can help you find these things. And what we charge for the services is nothing compared to what you're going to get out of it. And you get a chat room. We teach you how to use this system. We give you the training tools. And we even tell you some of these trades that we're talking about. So we're pretty engaged to help you make money.
So you're telling me that they're doing this dividend every single quarter then? So you can ride in every 90 days on
they
that?
have different prices. It all depends on how much money they make. But they do pay these special dividends and regular quarterly dividends. But they're the best dividend payer right now in the market.
That's exactly what you want. You want to get that extra overage of what you're holding on to. And then if you want to exit that because the price went up, well, then I guess, the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and then you just rinse and repeat. And our system just tells you. It literally says buy, it literally says sell. So, I mean.
It does. There's a circle or a diamond. And
yeah,
it's that easy.
You get the system. I mean, I don't know. We try to make it bomb-proof, and you can set alerts, and it literally alert you. We did interviews before when my system's digging away. It's just telling you it's a buy signal, it's a buy signal, it's a sell signal, and you just go ahead and you just take the trades, and you'll do fine. And we don't do anything crazy. We don't do crazy stocks, and we don't promise the world or any of that stuff. It's just good old-fashioned momentum trading that an algorithm is finding the opportunities.
Yeah, and I use the TradingView platform to be able to see what's going on, because what you have with the signals trading service inside there is one of the layers on top. So for me, it's kind of a one-stop shop. I dig through there and look for different analysis, buy sell signals on just the regular TradingView platform, but then also inside what you had for the moneymaker there on the signals trading service as well. So definitely worth a look.
I always run over, but it's always good stuff. I think you and I could probably talk for 8 hours every day on this stuff. There's so many opportunities and so many things to be worried about that people need to have a head on a swivel and start looking for opportunities or watch cautionary areas in your portfolio and in your life. So thanks for having me on, Dave.
Ken, I'll close off here as well, because the news that we're seeing today is just so incredibly negative. It's drawing it, this negative force is like pulling everybody's psyche and thought into this just super dark area of negative, like, oh, we're stuck in here, we can't do a thing. You got to completely shift right over here where there's so many opportunities now because of all the shifting and the changes that are happening. There's more opportunities right now, movements everywhere, way, shape, and form across every single industry, that there's more opportunities to be found right now than ever in human history. And instead of going into a day doomy and gloomy, it's like, what can we accomplish today? And I'll talk to you next time, Bob. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. Bye bye.